Right, should now be live. Let's have a look. Okay, if you are coming in on Facebook, give me a hello. How are we doing? I'm just going to set up. So if you are on replay, you can probably fast forward a minute. If you're coming in live, drop a 1 below. Let me know you can hear me. If you're on replay, just drop a replay below. Also, let me know if you can hear me. Okay. Okay, are we live? Let's have a look on Facebook. Yep, we are now live. Hey, Sandra. Good, perfect. So just drop a 1 in the comments if you come in. Hey, Stephanie. How are we doing? Hope we're all good. Drop a 1 in the comments if you can hear me. We are a few minutes early, unlike me. We've got sparkling water in a wine glass tonight. Always a good one. Sort this light out. Otherwise, I'll keep going away, then coming back. So, drop a 1 if you're coming in live in the comments. Just let me know you are in. Just drop a 1 in the comments. And if you are coming in on replay, obviously drop a replay below just to let me know who's watched it. Hey, Michelle, how are we doing? Facebook, this is Sandra. Okay. So if you're coming in, give me a hello. Hey, Michelle. Hey, Sandra. Thanks, Jackie. Awesome. So just while we're waiting, just comment below. I just want you to comment below and ask, just answer the question of what you want to get from tonight, just so I get a better idea of kind of what you want. Hey, Debbie. So just comment below. What do you want to get from tonight? What's kind of your kind of number 1 thing you want to get from this? Just comment below while we're waiting for the 8 o'clock. The gut is a fascinating thing. Such a fascinating thing. Hey, Eileen, just drop a 1. Hey, Debbie, lots of Debbies in tonight. All good. The gut's a really fascinating thing. Like, I spend a lot of evenings getting lost in research papers and looking at this. And yeah, I actually met the guy who coined the term probiotic. And it was a bit like meeting like someone famous. I didn't know what to say to him other than, wow, you're like a hero. Anyway, down to earth guy, very down to earth guy. So, awesome. We shall make a start. So just drop a 2 in the comments if you can see my screen, okay? Drop a 2 in the comments if you can see my screen. You should be able to see my screen any second now, hopefully. He says. Just drop a 2 in the comments if you can see my screen. Tips on how to improve my gut health. Perfect, you're in the right place. Recap and info on postbiotics. I'm guessing you mean probiotics, Sandra, or do you mean post antibiotics? Either or, we got you covered. 2, perfect, you can see my screen. Hey, Sue, how are we doing? Perfect, Debbie. Thank you. So, thank you for coming in. Hey, Sandra. So how to improve your gut health and ditch the bloating. As I said, the gut is just a real fascinating area. There's lots of rubbish out there, a hell of a lot of rubbish on what you can do, what you can't do, what probiotics say. What I'm sharing with you tonight is very research driven. At the same time, even the research in this area is also very open to suggestions. 1 second. 1 sec. Okay, 1 second. Let me just come back in. There we go. Right. That was a Zoom hack. Right, it should be in on here. Okay. Right, can you see my screen again now? Can you see my screen again now? Awesome. Perfect. So, okay, so like I said, it's a complex yet simple area if we go through it. So what I'm not going to be giving you tonight is a quick fix. It's a super quick fix, okay? So a quick fix in that we need to get away from just into the space of get one thing in terms of take a probiotic and that's it. I don't want you to leave tonight with that one thing because it's never going to be as simple as that, okay? There's never going to be as simple as take that and then we're sorted. And I'm saying this now because it's very easy to get carried away with that area when I show you some of the research. And this is why I've specifically ordered this in terms of what you can do today for free with the foods you eat, rather than go down the probiotic route and all that. We will be going over that, but later on, because it can be quite exciting when you see some of the stuff. If I'm honest, this is very exciting. But that we can get into that zone of thinking, okay, if I take that, that impacts that. And I just want to say that when it comes to food and nutrition, because remember, it's not probiotic isn't pharmaceutical grade or anything like that. It's very difficult to really measure it. And this is an important point because when you look at, okay, when it comes to the nutrition side of things, if you're studying a drug, you know that someone isn't just taking a little bit of that drug before, okay? They take the drug and that's your effect. There's your placebo, the person not taking the drug. When it comes to nutrition and probiotics, you've got the person's gut health, which can be different from the start, their probiotic, their microbiota, all the different bacteria and strains in their gut. You've also got the fact that some people might be eating more fermented foods already than normal. They might eat more vegetables in their diet, prebiotics. They might have more dairy in their diet, probiotics, etc. And this is where a lot of the confusion comes in. So let's get to it. So, and I say this but this is a massive topic. This is more simple than a probiotic because the gut can be associated with bloating, tiredness, food allergies, intolerances. And if any of these really stick out to you, just let me know. Fatigue, poor recovery, low immunity, depression, brain fog, literally any symptomology, you can pretty much find an association with that. And that's the good thing in terms of we know that the gut is super important, but also the part where it can get a bit rainbows and unicorn, and that you can just say, you can blame the gut for it. It's the gut. It's just my gut bacteria. And again, associated with all of these as well in terms of the makeup of our microbiota. So today, what we are going to cover, so a 5-day protocol you can I say 5 days because we can do it for 5 days and see a response from it. I'm not saying you should stop after 5 days, and I'm not saying you should carry on. It's got to be your choice in that. Sandra, food intolerance, cool. So the surprising foods that could both hinder and improve your gut health. That's always going to be something that does make people think, oh, actually, I thought they were promoting my gut health. And they do for some people, but not that person. Fermented foods and probiotics, are they safe? Are they beneficial? There's a lot around this. Probiotics and mental health, skin, IBS, IBD, and obesity. Interesting stuff. And at the end, we're going to look at applying some of this stuff into something that you can do on your busiest, most stressful day. And I think this quote sums up probiotics and gut health more than anything I can say. So it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And assuming that one particular probiotic is just going to cure all. Now, when I show you the research, you would sometimes think it does. There's a lot of things I'm going to share with you tonight, which you'll be like, why is this not like shared in mainstream media? I have no idea. Hey, Julia. Okay, so for those that don't know who I am, my name is Matt Fruci. Growing up, Italian background, surrounded by pasta, wheat, pizza, bread. Nan and granddad, bless them, would always be like, eat more, eat more, eat more. Little did I know that I would later be diagnosed with celiac disease. And throughout my childhood, this is kind of what got me into where I am today. And we always need to thank our almost seemingly curses at the time, which actually come into our blessings. You know, when things seem like they're, oh, I wish I didn't have this. I wish I didn't have this obstacle. They actually lead you into a direction that you probably wouldn't have taken. Did that contribute to then having an eating disorder? Who knows? Hey, Lynn, who knows? But that was kind of me growing up. Very low in confidence, would never do anything like this, let alone stand up, talk. And the key moment for me was when I was studying at Loughborough University, where I did my first master's before going into human nutrition at Oxford Brookes. Is this guy here? He's a professor, Ian Henry. He literally, I had to defend my research at the time, which was all about exercise, diabetes. And he literally said, like, if you can't talk, what are you actually going to be able to do with your life? Like, deeper than anything. And I was like, blimey, yeah. And that was a massive wake-up call for me. And I'm sharing this because I know when a lot of people start, for example, our Kickstart programs, everyone's super nervous and anxious and thinks that everyone else is just, it's all right for them. They're in a space where it's just easy for them. I'm worried I'll be the least fit. I won't be able to do X, Y, and Z. And everyone deep down is probably thinking the same. And little did I know, I wasted so much time worrying about what others were thinking, but hampering myself in the process. And it was only when he literally just stood up in front of everyone, probably like embarrassed me even more, when I woke up for this stuff. Then I've worked in public health and the NHS, working on diabetes programs mainly. And then now Fruci Fit. I still lecture a bit at Oxford Brookes University in nutrition as well, which is where I get to meet some cool people around gut health as well, and where I got to meet Professor Glenn Gibson, who's at Reading, who coined the term probiotics. What a claim that is. That's quite cool. And just some of the background in terms of what we do now. We help people develop better relationships with food and get into exercise again and enjoy it, maybe when you never thought you ever would. Okay, so on to today. So we often hear like, oh, I've just got a gut feeling. Drop a yes in the comments if you've ever said that, but never really linked gut health with it. You just say it like it's, I've just got a gut feeling. But yet we never actually think, oh, why have I got a gut feeling? Drop a yes in the comments if you've ever said that. So if we think about it, the gut absorbs the nutrition from your food. So where the majority of serotonin is produced. So if you think about that feel-good hormone, we're feeling good, yet most of it is in our gut. Alison, yeah. Sandra, yeah. I've got a gut feeling. Next time you say that, remember there's bacteria who are listening. They're listening to everything we do. We're worried about, vaccines turning us into robots. What about those little bacteria in our guts who are literally alive? They're alive in there. No one's saying anything about it. They're trying to take us over. Anyway, hey, Becky. Yeah, Debbie, Lynn, Paula. So, and thinking about that already, I just dropped some things in as we go with this. So tryptophan, which is a nutrient we can get high from kind of turkey, but also from bifidobacteria, which you may have heard on your yogurts. When you look on the back, it will say a culture made of bifidobacteria, etc. If you look on the back, lactobacillus. Bifidobacteria can actually help make tryptophan, which is a precursor to serotonin, that feel-good hormone, which can help our mental health. But I'm just dropping stuff in here. So when a majority of your immune system is housed, amazing when you think about that, and I'll go on to some research later on, and where the majority of bacteria lives. So, and consider it's not, bacteria doesn't, like probiotics, if you like, good bacteria, doesn't just exist, and we'll go into definitions in a second, hey Bindu, but it doesn't just exist in our gut, it also from our mouth, like in other areas. Well, it's just the majority is in our gut. So that's literally from stomach, small intestine, large intestine, where a lot of the magic happens. So connected to the brain via the gut-brain axis as well. So we know from, say, something like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, that we know it's kind of a gut-brain, that gut-brain axis is the key part of it, because there's very much the psychosocial side of it, and also our more physiological side of it in terms of the bacteria. And if you compare that to IBD, which is a little bit different, that's more like ulcerative colitis, that's a bit more of a physiological state, whereas IBS is more psychological, psychosocial, and physiological. There's just two components that are coming at it from there. So they're just so connected in terms of condition. But there's more. So most metabolically active organ in humans, so a range of bacteria. That's what, if you hear microbiota, all these terms flown around, that's the range, the different bacteria. And we know there's so much on there. So we know it's involved in disease onset and can be modulated by diet. And this is a key point here, because what you eat can literally, hey Helen, hey Sarah, can literally change your gut microbiota massive, like super quick. Like you could have a poo sample, without getting too much, if I might put you off your dinner and your snacks tonight, you can have a poo sample and that could change in literally 3 days, which is quite fascinating, right? Like 3 days of what you eat will show potentially different bacteria in your poo. Anyway, we're going to be talking about poo probably a lot tonight. Don't mention sweet corn. Anyway, so we'll go on to fermentation later. So like I said, what if the gut is non-optimal at the start? Like all these things. And this is a serious thing, right? And we know that if we can make a difference with this through lifestyle changes and also through things that maybe we can add in or take away, what a difference it could have. And we know that from research, we're getting closer. I think the days are numbered before we can start to say, based on the research, maybe 5-10 years, you'll be able to go quite strain specific for a specific condition with a bacteria. Throwing it out there now, like based on where we're at the moment, already they're starting to go like H. pylori, which I know a few of you have mentioned, like antibiotic, like IBS and stomach issues that you can get alongside taking antibiotics, so antibiotic associated diarrhea. We're starting to see that actually certain strain is good for that. So it's like, oh, what do you need today? We'll give you that strain. A little wives' tale is that they say, hey Anna, dogs, when they're eating poo, are looking for certain strains. Maybe they're ahead of us, who knows? So, and this is a fascinating thing, and it really brought our attention a bit more to the gut microbiota when this study, they looked at obesity and metabolism and gut health, essentially. So they got human twins and they got feces, if you like, and planted them into sterile mice. So they had an obese human twin, a lean human twin, okay? So they then used sterile mice with no bacteria in their gut. So they gave them the microbiome sample from the human twin. So lean, obese. And what happened was quite fascinating. Even though they were fed the same diet, the one that was given the lean microbiome gained less weight than obviously the one who had the obese microbiome. Now, this would suggest cause and effect. Now, of course, this is in mice, and we're yet to see this replicated in humans, of course. But don't laugh, because fecal transplants are already happening even in the NHS. They do it for C. diff, and it has about an 80 to 90% success rate, whereas antibiotics have about a 50% success rate. So it's definitely coming closer. There is some concerns with if you did fecal transplants and someone has the microbiome that represents more of someone who is anxious or depressed, could you also be transferring those tendencies into someone else? That's a hypothesis that we don't know yet, and I don't think anyone can be sure of that not happening. Who knows? But if we think about bacteria, 99.9% are friendly. Do you know how many bacteria actually exist? Any guesses? Put a little guess in the comments. So many that you won't be able to say the word. Yeah. Bit more than 2 on your yogurt. But the cool thing is most are actually friendly. So if we look at it, our gut, so this is like, I describe it like a planet. You've got good bacteria inside there, good, bad bacteria, all just going around in there. They're all looking for food. They're all looking to survive. Some of the stuff we eat, some of the stuff we do, stress, smoking, alcohol, lack of sleep, will all that impact our bad bacteria probably feeding that. We've got the other side, and I'm saying this, probiotics, prebiotics, all helping feed our good bacteria. However, are we chasing the wrong number here? We're going to go into this shortly. So, good guess, Helen. Is that making sense so far in terms of the gut, what it is? And before we really go into this, again, I want to take a step back before I show you some of the stuff, because it's like, oh, probiotics. Because IBS, I know some of you are in for that, bloating, a lot of that can actually be down to this first and foremost. And that could be that we're actually just eating too much at a certain meal. We've increased our vegetable intake too much too soon. So when we look at fat loss in total, we still can't dispute that calories are most important. Protein will help with keeping us full, keeping us satiated. Carbs and fats, again, will it make you eat more or less? So should you eat more carbs or more fat or less or more? What's high carb or high fat? Michael Mosley said, lower this, lower this. Don't eat after 6 p.m. It really depends whether that makes you eat more or less throughout the day. And that's the key indicator as to whether it will work or not. Does that make sense? So questions to ask yourself already. Am I in a calorie deficit? How do I know? Have I eaten enough protein? Could you increase your veg intake? Water intake? All important things that underpin what I'm about to say. These are the basics. Now let's get into it. So bloating and IBS. Just comment below with bloating if this is something that you want to get a handle on this. Because I'm going to go for a dietary approach now that you can literally apply now for free without any probiotics or crazy supplements. Yeah, cool. So, has anyone heard of the Fodmap diet? Hey, Annette, anyone heard of the Fodmap diet? Fodmaps. I'll test you further. Does anyone know what it actually is? What is a Fodmap? Anyone know? No. So, yeah, Bindu. So a fermentable carbohydrate, essentially. So these are fermentable, and some are more fermentable than others. The byproduct of fermentation is gas. Yeah, Stephanie. So these foods, the high FODMAP foods, can cause bloating. Now, what's going to confuse a lot of people is actually they're often the foods that we're trying to eat more of. And if you have constipation, I'm going to show you some research later, which literally just blows your mind, right? So you have constipation, you go to the doctor, and yeah, Debbie, all good. I've just let them in. They were knocking at the door, I've just noticed. You go to doctors and I'm struggling with pooing, and they might say, right, we'll give you some fiber gel, etc. And that works for some people. For some people, it actually doesn't. Actually, removing fiber and fermentable carbohydrates actually helps, and vice versa, which does kind of blow your mind a little bit. Now, they're rapidly fermented in the gut, which can cause IBS symptoms such as bloating, wind, abdominal pain, altered bowel habits. So again, with bloating and IBS symptoms can also be triggered by psychosocial things, like not knowing where a loo is can trigger someone's IBS, because it's like that panic side of things. So there's lots of stress. People might feel it as well. Not to mention, as we'll go over, certain foods, intolerances, allergies. So this kind of diet, a low FODMAP, which I'll go into in a second, has been shown to reduce IBS symptoms in 70% of people with IBS. So it's got a high success rate, but no evidence that it works for so non-gut symptoms like headache, skin, joint problems, which is often linked to gut health as well. So this is an example of things you can put in on here. So low FODMAP food. So if you were to get rid of bloating here, you would focus more on these ones in general. And they're quite normal foods, right? So eggs, meats, fish, and I'll go into this in a bit more detail in a second, but this is because they're more protein-based and fat-based. So you can't ferment protein or fat, okay? Carbohydrate is the area where you're going to have to make the most changes. So certain carbs are more fermentable than others. So I'll go into this group in a bit more detail in a second. No need to kind of go into crazy detail with this. But the interesting thing that gets people is you look at like artichoke. And as I go into later, there's some great research on artichokes, and they call them fartichokes. So you know, the evidence is there. But artichokes is a prebiotic, and that's like feeding your good bacteria, as we'll go into. But interestingly on here, if you're trying to control the symptoms of bloating, as so far we don't really have any other options, they recommend actually avoiding this. Now, have a guess. What do you think happens long-term to our gut microbiota and our diversity in our gut if we follow this diet, but we manage our symptoms? Does our gut health get more similar to an optimal, if we can even know what an optimal is, because we're still guessing? And anyone who says, yeah, you need this, definitely, we don't really know. Do you think it gets, if you follow this diet, do you think your gut health on paper gets better or worse? And this is where you've got that dichotomy. And by saying dichotomy, I've probably given you the answer. So it gets your gut bacteria in your gut, it essentially gets less diverse. So essentially worse on paper, but your symptoms get better. This is where it gets, a little bit confusing. So problems with this excessive exclusion, how do we know what the triggers actually are? What about if it was just the wheat or gluten thing and you were doing all these things? It's actually to follow it properly, it's got a traffic light signals, and it's super confusing, if I'm honest. You got green, you got ambers, you got reds. Potentially malnourished as well. So what I want to share with you instead, more so, is this one in the middle. So this is low fermentation potential diet. So you got the more complicated version of this, which is the Fodmap, which is quite confusing and not that doable, in my opinion. You've got the low fermentation, which I'm going to go over now. And then you've got the simple version, which is just literally just cut out fiber. And that will work, by the way. But it's so simple that you might end up missing out on a lot of nutrients. And then essentially you've got to ask the question, and that's fine, by the way, if you want to go down that route. But if you're cutting out this, what nutrients am I? And this is what I would always do if I'm ever working with you with this. If you say, no, I know it's dairy or da-da-da. Okay, if you cut out dairy, what are we missing? These nutrients, B12, protein, iodine, etc. Where are we going to get these from now? Let's make a list of these foods and replace that. It's not about what you believe right or wrong. Everything is doable. You've just got to be selective with it. Okay. So let's go into it now. So this is about reducing the fermentation, okay, potential of the foods in your diet. Quite simple. So dietary fat, like I said, it doesn't ferment. Okay. So for most people, you're going to be fine. And remember, we're starting small here. You might need to get more into this potentially, but I'd rather start higher with less exclusion than go all in and then have to really crawl back. So, avocado, olive oil, butter, cream, nuts, seeds, generally okay. Hard cheese, yogurt, mayonnaise, fine. If you're using meat, milk, lacto-free or alternative nuts, soy milks, generally. So we're just cutting the lactose out here because lactose is fermented. Lactase is the enzyme, but also you might have some fermentation in that as well. So super simple with the fat. So fats are all good, not really any changes there because it's not fermented. And can you see already, compared to the Fodmap, there'll be a few foods in there that would still be a bit, always a bit Fodmappy. But for most people, we actually find that they're actually okay with these foods. So protein foods don't ferment either, so you can go crazy with them. Also, like I said about turkey, Maybe that's why everyone's happy at Christmas. Who knows? Tryptophan may actually have benefits beyond that as well. So protein, fine. Now, the food groups, if you like, vegetables and carbs are going to be where we're going to be making more changes. So most vegetables, fine. Ones to be cautious of: broccoli, cabbage, sprouts, lentils, chickpeas, kidney beans, legumes are going to be the key ones. And if whilst doing this, you suddenly swing the other way, because people doing this sometimes do, they go from 5-6 times a day to not being able to go. And also, this is an important conversation to have. What is a normal amount to go? There's no real definition of this. It's more, if you've seen the Bristol stools chart, just Google that. It's more about being normal in there, but also just consider that any change in your diet may just see a swing quite quickly to one thing or another. Even if you added in a probiotic, for example, you might see something change quite quickly. Doesn't mean it's not working or is working, but you might just see a difference. Like I said, your poo changes quickly. But what's normal for you will be normal, and you just need to monitor that. So if you struggle all of a sudden with constipation, then a little protocol for you: sweet corn, linseed, extra 200 ml fluid does the trick to a lot of people. But as I'll go into, sometimes actually just lowering this can help anyway, in terms of going normal and regular. Starchy food. So this is the key one. So everything you've been told about whole grains, etc., you actually have to do the opposite here. So if you normally had brown rice or even white rice, you want to switch that to more like the jasmine rice. Jasmine rice is higher GI, which means it's essentially not got to be broken down so much as less fermentable roughage in it. So the more fiber, the more roughage, the more it's got to be fermented, which has much, much benefit in terms of feeding your bacteria. However, the bloating, the fermentation, and they think that there's something called bacteroids, which, bacteroid ETs, and they're more present in people who can handle these foods. And they think that these are key in helping people ferment foods, essentially, and make short chain fatty acids, which I'll go into, which can have all these benefits in. But if you have lower amounts, it seems that we have issues now. And it's all well and good saying, yeah, but I'm going to chase good bacteria and stuff. But the problem is if you then have IBS and you're not absorbing your nutrients so well, you could be then low in iron, B12, you're not absorbing nutrients, you're then feeling tired, you're then sluggish, you're then not doing the things that you want to do, and all for the sake of trying to have good gut bacteria, which you can't even accurately measure anyway, right? So generally you want to lower the intake in general, like I said, like lowering the intake of this food group anyway. But if you're having them, stick to these ones. So rice, pasta, rice noodles, generally, sourdough, the bread is generally better. Corn is generally okay. So you don't ferment corn. So just a sample down there, like smoked salmon, boiled eggs, sandwich, maybe a small white, or sourdough, meat, veg, salad, filling, stir fry veg. So just so we can make it as normal as possible on here. So that's something to give a try. And at the end of this, I will share with you an actual sheet of this, so you've got this. Okay, so if you do want that, stick around to the end, and I can share that with you. So a key question that people ask is will I need to follow this forever? And no one really knows the answer to this. But if it controls your symptoms and you have more energy now, everyday tasks are now easier, you can focus on actually getting on with your life, you're not bloating, worried about going to the loo, then that's surely better, right? That's surely a good thing if you're controlling that. There's some research still going on that you might heal your symptoms and you can go back to eating normally, potentially. And as we get better with the strains of probiotics for certain conditions, I see no reason why potentially this won't happen in some people, but it's so complicated. It could be due to from birth, from prenatal in our lives, like as we'll go into. So are we still following right now? Give me a yes in the comments. Hope I haven't bored you too much. So cutting out food groups, like I said, some of the common things that we can try. Hey, Maggie. Hey, Elaine. Gluten, dairy, eggs, meat, soy. A lot of people go down this route. I'm going to cut out food soon. And there's nothing wrong with cutting out a food group and saying, I'm just going to see how it goes. And if you feel better from doing that, great. We can't argue. But if you're just switching one thing for another, what I like to do and suggest you do is look at, if you're going to cut out food group, pick one thing and look at what I am missing from my diet now, because you do run the risk of deficiency. So say you're going to cut out dairy. What are you missing now? Well, you're missing vitamin B12. That's important for energy, absorption of nutrients. You can only get that essentially from animal products, dairy, or supplementation. And by that, I do mean fortified milks, plant-based milks. Some will be fortified with it. So trying to get them in as well. So it's still supplementation. The protein intake, are you replacing it with something that's high in protein, or are you doing an almond coconut yogurt, which is actually just really high in fat? So your nutrition changes. Probiotics, we know it's got bifidobacteria in, lactobacillus, which are two real key ones. So where are we getting that from? We supplement it with probiotics. Are we getting another fermented product in? Iodine, which we know is important for thyroid. So what are we missing out on here? Okay. Always be critical with that. So now we get on to this is the real interesting part for me. But hopefully that was too. And that's something you can apply for free and just get going now. And let me know your results if you do try that. Like I said at the end, I will share the sheet with you. They use this in trials, clinics. Leicester use it a lot. They kind of seem to be up there with diabetes and gut health as well. So do probiotics and prebiotics actually work? So what are probiotics? So live microorganisms. So they're actually alive. So, and when given in adequate amounts, confer a health benefit to the host, us as the host. Okay. So, and this guy, Professor Glenn Gibson, I've mentioned a few times. It's a really interesting one because probiotics get criticized a lot and it's really hard to research them because, like I said, I'm different to you. I might have lots of lactobacillus, which is one strain of probiotics in me. Let's speak more English. Let's say Yakult. Everyone knows what Yakult is, little drinky thing, right? With probiotics. Let's say I need that lactobacillus casei shirota strain that they big up. I need that, but then you, or last person who commented, Debbie, you need bifidobacteria. But then I take the Yakult, which I've got already loads on, I'll see no benefit. Whereas Debbie takes the one that she needs, the bifidobacteria, and she sees a benefit. Now we conclude that probiotics work in 50% of the cases. Therefore, there's no health claim to probiotics because it only works 50% of the time. So can you see how it's so complicated compared to drugs? Drugs just work or don't, right? Does that make sense? And that's why I do think that probiotics don't get as much like coverage as they perhaps should, and they're just sat on the shelf and I don't think they're used properly yet either, because the types of strains we know are working in different people for that as well. Super fascinating. Now, the reason I've shared this quote, for pathogens, we say you don't need many, but for probiotics, we need them all. It doesn't make sense. And this is really interesting because obviously he's big on that. He spent his life researching probiotics, prebiotics. But when we talk about germs and like bad bacteria, we always say like we need to cut it all out. Like you see like hand gel and bleach or whatever kills 99% of germs. So, but when we study probiotics and we study people's poo, and say you administer, let's just say 100, you got 100 units, say 100 for easy maths, and in the poo there's now only there's probiotics in the poo, so it hasn't lasted. It's gone. There's only 3 left. People will say, well, it obviously hasn't. It's still it's in the poo. It's come out, so that means it hasn't cultured. It hasn't done anything. It's just died. And the interesting thing is we say when it comes to like the germs and bad bacteria that you don't need many, but in probiotics, people want to see it lasting 100%, or they kind of conclude it's not worth it. But we don't do that in a lot of other things. So Yeah. Probiotics in a concentrated form help balance of good and bad bacteria. Yeah. We're going to go into that. So prebiotics, lots of destroyed in the stomach acid and environment. Yeah. But a lot of, that's not conclusive in that they don't work just because stomach acid does the job, because they can have an impact on certain areas. It might be that we only need a little bit of it to get through to still have the benefit. If you were going to get a stomach bug, a lot of it will be killed in your stomach from the acid, but some of it will still get through. Does that make sense? And that still might give you diarrhea, sickness, even though your stomach acid should kill it all, right? So it's not a done deal. So prebiotics are essentially, as I'll show you with this diagram here, always everyone knows what Pac-Man is, right? So if you think of Pac-Man as like the probiotic is the food that they eat. So the bacteria eat prebiotics. So just to give you some ideas, so fermented products, prebiotics, chicory, garlic, onion, asparagus, sweet potato, artichokes, inulin, sauerkraut, pickles, cheese, yogurts, all examples. So inulin is more of like a supplement. It's like a type of fiber, which you kind of would need to supplement to get the effect of it, but it has been shown to have benefits with this, okay? So does that make sense when I explain it like that? Hopefully it does. So probiotics, we're going to go through probiotics in each stage now. So for a generally healthy gut, and that's what often people say. So we're going to look at this. There's no consensus of what the ultimate gut bacteria is. So what actually is a healthy gut? Now, these two, though, seem to come up all the time whenever they confer a benefit. So when they show a benefit in anything, these two kind of come up. And like I said, you'll see these in like yogurts and etc. And it's probably why there's so much, when you look at dairy intake and longevity or a health benefit, it's nearly always the fermented products that probably confer the most benefits. And I wonder, we hypothesize that it's probably them. So think of like cheese, yogurt. Probably most of the benefits of dairy are coming from those products. So these are just some, I know this is a big, I'm going to break this down, don't worry. These are just some of the benefits. So natural killer cell activity, these are like antiviral, anti-tumor, risk of certain cancers down, constipation benefit, pathogen, immune response, short chain fatty acids. So these are what went through fermentation. These are created. So from prebiotics and also probiotics just being there and them eating them, if you like. Short chain fatty acids, they confer a benefit in terms of colon cancer, in terms of keeping us more full up, which then goes into the obesity side of things. So you can get really interesting with this. Food intolerance. So like I said, with short chain fatty acids, so this is the fermentation of fiber by bacteria in the colon creates these short chain fatty acids. And these are what they're called: acetate, propionate, and butyrate. And these have a benefits in terms of mood, hunger, absorption of minerals like calcium, reduced risk of disease. And we think about the amount of like stuff we don't understand. And then this is just in the background going on, which is quite fascinating. So again, this is a win for that fiber prebiotics. Remember, when it comes to bloating, all of this stuff you want to avoid, not the cheese and yogurt. So that's the key thing. So we're going to go over a few things now in terms of, this is something that's very recent, obviously, of COVID. And they looked at essentially hospitalized patients with COVID, and they found that clinical outcomes improved quicker when they gave probiotics. And it's quite fascinating. Obviously, this is only one study, but imagine if this is used moreover. And for the sake of a probiotic, which can be relatively cheap, why not just go for it? It's not going to really, I can't imagine it having any drawbacks to it. It's not like a pharmaceutical which can interfere. So yeah, interesting. So this is probably where the most success comes, and this is more around travelers, diarrhea, antibiotic associated diarrhea as well. So we know the equilibrium in the gut after antibiotic use can be a massive thing here. So if you're on antibiotics, it may even help it work better because you're boosting your good bacteria. So antibiotics, when you're taking that, they'll wipe out your good bacteria as well, but we can restore that equilibrium quicker. I know a few researchers, they've looked at taking it kind of 4 hours apart, the antibiotics, to just kind of boost them up again. But at the very least afterwards, you're not going to do any harm with it. So H. pylori, which a few people talked about. So them numbers are quite close, but there's others. That's the worst study. And what I mean by that is all the others show a lot benefit. But I just wanted to share that because, it's not a massive difference, but essentially taking probiotics eradicated it by like 83% of the time, not was 74. So it's still a benefit, but this was the closest they were to not conferring a huge benefit. What is your view on kefir? Yeah, exactly like fermented dairy. So that would come into the same as like yogurt, but may have slightly higher amounts of bacteria. So yeah, good kefir, all good. But again, effectiveness seems to be strain and condition specific. So traveler's diarrhea, infectious diarrhea, antibiotic associated diarrhea, probiotics. This is the area where probiotics are closing in, I would say, on getting a health claim. They've tried about 400 times and they've had like 400 rejections. But that's because, like I said, it's really difficult because people start from different strains, people start from different areas. But if you look at certain studies, when I was at Loughborough University, they were studying in 2012 at the Olympics, they were actually studying the athletes, and they were looking at, despite their training, trying to keep them away from having upper respiratory tract infections like colds and viruses. And they found that probiotics were helping with that. But the problem is, because they're not helping in everyone, they can't confirm that effect. I do think they're like the bullied school kid a bit, that, it doesn't count for you, probiotic. You've got to be 100% correct or you're nothing. But traveler's diarrhea is one that's like been researched time and time again. Like take cruise ships, like when people get like stomach issues, etc., everyone kind of seems to go down with it. And it's definitely seen an improvement there, but you could apply that to people going on holiday, to university, to a new environment, back to work, especially in current conditions, back to the office, taking it for 2 weeks before, which isn't exactly a long time, seems to have benefits with that. So may want to consider that. But like I said, it's difficult to say, take this when there's, and that's why there's not many health claims on the food. But if you're trying to get a benefit from it, and you take, like, to give a simple term, if you took Actimel and then it didn't do anything for 4 weeks, and then you switch to Yakult to see if it did, it'd be interesting to see. But you'd have to have a clear outcome in mind of what you're trying to do. So inflammatory bowel disease, this is different to IBS. So ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. These are associated with low microbiome diversity, so a range of gut bacteria, low levels of short-chain fatty acid butyrate. So like I said, with those short-chain fatty acids that come from the fermentation of fiber, vitamin D deficiency is associated with this as well. But there's been some interesting research. There's 2.4-fold increase in remission compared to placebo for ulcerative colitis, and that's with probiotics. So you might have heard of VSL-3. You'll see that in like Boots and stuff like that, which is quite interesting. So remission in terms of symptoms. So if you know anyone with that, yeah, why not? You're still going to be taking probably potentially drugs anyway, but interesting. So on to IBS, which we've touched on already, obviously with the low fermentation diet, which is free, you can just apply straight away. So what does the research show on IBS? So like I said, it is a disorder of the gut-brain axis. So we know there's psychosocial side of things. Stress, is there a loo nearby? I know what it's like. Before I was actually I knew I had a wheat allergy, intolerance, celiac disease from a young age. Like I thought it was normal though, graphic here, to eat and then go to the loo straight away. I literally, most things I ate, I just need to go to the loo straight away. It's quite liberating actually, not to have to do that now. I'm so much more productive. Anyway, enough about that. But I am. So it's a massive condition and it impacts people's lives hugely. And like I said, what is normal? That it's a taboo subject. You don't just go, oh, I'm just off to the loo. Oh, by the way, how many times have you been today? I was just wondering because I just wonder if mine's normal. Hey, Claire. So there's lots of impact. If this stress can trigger it, food can trigger it. Can they both come in together with that? So it's a bit different to IBD. So like I said, bacteroid DTs, which help break down FODMAPs, which may contribute. So if these are lower, then this could be perhaps associated with it. So the thing is, you've got like yoga shown to help, Tai Chi shown to help. So you're thinking the psychosocial side of things there, and exercise as well. So high intensity, low intensity has been shown to help also trigger it as well. Low FODMAPs, low fermentation, also probiotics, but there's mixed results. So again, they can't just go, yeah, it works or not. And like everything, a combination is probably going to be key here. And likely combining them is probably going to be the best form of here. A symbiotic, as they call it. So food allergies and intolerances. I'm sharing this from a point of view of there is some stuff that you can do now, and I know some people, and I've experienced in the past. There's a company called Simprove who were working with the NHS years ago, and I went there in Farnborough, and I went there and I spoke to the owner and them there, and I took Simprove and still ate wheat, even though I was diagnosed with celiac, and I wouldn't. So I bear in mind I get mouth ulcers, bloating, IBS, like straight to the loo. And when I was taking Simprove, I actually didn't get any mouth ulcers, which is quite interesting. Could have been coincidence, I don't know. Placebo effect, we just don't know. But as soon as I stopped taking it again, they would all happen again. It's just a little study trial. But going into food allergies and intolerances, so super interesting. I find this stuff really interesting, and when you wouldn't want to be with me when you're pregnant, I was literally there. Jen, Mrs. Fruci, have you taken your pre and probiotic today? So it's only because I'm like reading. So I've probably spent many evenings rocking a baby reading these, but also prior to pregnancy, prior to Jen's pregnancy, reading these. So Lactobacillus and bifidobacteria, again, pre and postnatal reduced food sensitivity and atopic sensitization. So that could be psoriasis, eczema, and particular benefits noted in children delivered via C-section. That's perhaps due to the bacteria that they're covered in down birth canal. But interestingly, it just goes to show that there is a lot we can do. And I don't think it's ever too late, but obviously, when you're younger, that's when a lot of gut bacteria seems to be set. We can deviate away, like we can modulate that with diet and probiotics. So I see no reason why, like we say with exercise and muscle, it's never too late to change that. So probiotics for the brain, mental health. So does anyone have any questions at the moment on this side of things? Anyone have any questions on this side of things? And going back to when you cut foods out, if you do go down that route, and how to bring them back in, I'll just share something that, in terms of going back to the dairy side of things, if you were cutting out dairy, you could do it. One thing I would recommend doing first and foremost is with milk, right? So to see if it's the milk or the lactose. Get lactose-free milk, get milk. So normal cow's milk, lactose-free milk. Put them in separate jugs. Get someone to do it for you, obviously, so you don't know. So they put lactose-free in one and then normal milk in the other. Then have one for 3 days and have the other for 3 days. And just report your symptoms each day, then find out what happened. And I say that because there's a lot of studies where people who diagnose themselves with lactose intolerance actually are fine when they do that. And again, that psychosocial thing is very real when it comes to that. So worth doing. If you are cutting out like gluten and you're trying to see how you get on with that, and it's just an intolerance, there's no set protocol that's been proven scientifically with this, but it makes sense to me to cut it out, but then bring it back in slowly, perhaps after a week, starting off with something like sourdough or rye, which are lower wheat gluten, and seeing how you respond, then maybe just going a bit more and more towards maybe then oats, then wheat after that. And you might find that there's a certain part there where right, that's my limit. Something to consider. So probiotics for the brain, mental health. This is fascinating. So back to that gut feeling side of things. So this is one in depression. Now, of course, you're not just going to tell someone just with depression, just take a probiotic and it will do. But this did show benefits in cognitive functions in patients with major depression. So start like activity in the brain, starting to think a bit differently. But you've got to consider, again, it's a real complicated area, because if someone has IBS and they don't really realize that it is IBS, or they perhaps have loose bowels and they're not absorbing iron, B12, they're low on energy, they're more likely to rate themselves as depressed, down, and then all of a sudden their IBS stops, perhaps because of the probiotics. They then feel better. Is this the probiotic working on the brain, or is it a side effect of feeling better from covering their IBS, from helping their IBS? Does that make sense? So we don't really know at the moment because the studies just aren't there. However, it's something that definitely needs to be looked at more. I'd love to know what your thoughts were on that. So this is more self-reported around. This is obviously Yakult, this drink. Consuming a milk drink containing a probiotic on mood and cognition. So people who reported low mood at the start, they were given placebo or a probiotic. The people who were given probiotic, mood increased at the end. And we can also go into like ADHD, and autism. There's some really interesting studies on there in terms of, well, it wasn't even published. So it was Professor Glenn Gibson who was doing this study, and they were looking at probiotics, and they wanted to see behavior. I'll see if I can get it up. They were looking at behavior, and they got parents to obviously give their kids probiotic or a placebo, and they found that improvement in behavior, etc., was there. They didn't find that. That's just what the parents said, and they didn't want to switch to the placebo because they were seeing positive results. So they found out that the child was on the probiotic because their behavior improved. So when they said, right, now we're going to switch you to this one, they then just said no. So they could kind of report the study, but not. And nothing has been done about this, as far as I know. It's a very unethical thing to study, because you could argue if you're seeing a benefit, surely all children who are autistic should be given the opportunity to take them, right? So is it ethical to say, no, you're going to take placebo for 12 weeks and potentially could have an impact? But yeah, the thing is with these studies, you don't know if it's cause or effect, but I know Glenn Gibson at the time, they were looking at the gastro problems that could be associated with it, with autism, and there's certain toxins brain that could be, we've talked about the gut brain axis. Yeah, fascinating stuff, but definitely one that you can't conclude on or just say, yes, just take a probiotic. But yeah, interesting stuff. So for skin, it's talked about a lot actually in terms of like psoriasis. There was improvement in inflammatory markers of people with psoriasis. But then some people find that actually cutting out dairy helps with that. But then also some people find that there's no studies on that, by the way, like research that shows that, just from working with people. But also there's other things going on, right? If someone's seeking healthy actions, they often end up actually making better choices elsewhere. Maybe they're less stressed. Maybe they're also starting meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, going for walks, getting outside more, taking vitamin D. Quite a difficult one. Now, if we go back to probiotics here, in terms of where we are at and what we were talking about, if there's the right bacteria, does that not help with the absorption of the goodness in the food? Potentially, Maggie. If there's the right bacteria in the gut, does that not help with the absorption of? Potentially, but you could have good bacteria and still potentially have IBS and not absorbing the nutrients from the food. But generally, I'd say there's less association with absorption of food and gut bacteria, but more the byproducts of the good bacteria, which have those short chain fatty acids, which we know seem to be having a little party in the colon, in terms of potentially colon cancer, hunger hormones, which seem to be going on, your immune system as well. So that there is a criteria that a few studies have looked at in terms of probiotics. So they need to arrive, survive, and then thrive in the target area, aka the large intestine. So, like I said, though, we don't know how many need to get there, but this was a study that mimicked. So you might have heard of a lot of these products. So BioCult, you might have heard of that, be it VSL, Yakult, Actimel, Simprove. And they compared these brands and they wanted to see essentially whether they first and foremost had the amount of probiotics they said in them. So if they say, we've got 10 billion in here, when they measure them, is it actually 10 million? So you can see here, only dairy-based or water-based probiotics delivered 100% or more of the claimed content. And then they mimicked the stomach. So they found that a lot of the bacteria just simply was like dying in the stomach. Now, again, we don't know what this means. So don't think that it's interesting nonetheless. We don't know whether that means that, okay, does that mean that it does nothing still, or is some still getting through? But if you look at that drop off, quite crazy. And then does it actually create a growth in there? Because essentially you want the bacteria to grow, right? You want to feed it, prebiotics grow. And some were showing no growth. Now, other researchers, even Glenn Gibbs himself, says you don't actually, he would say it doesn't grow and it shouldn't grow. That's just not how it works. It works more so from the byproducts of that you put in there, and it has an effect while you take it. And potentially then that can have a benefit that does help long-term through perhaps fermentation and handling nutrition better. But we just don't know at the moment. And whether probiotics should be taken forever, probably not. If it's in the form of like drinks and food, well, then it's obviously a lot doable, a lot more doable. And this is quite a nice little table in here. So it showed kind of what survived, what didn't. And if you're wondering there, that it's because they mimicked each three. So if Actimel got through, it kind of shown that it colonizes the gut. But this has actually been criticized by the guy who coined the term probiotics. So, just interesting. So talking of fiber and prebiotics, we've talked a lot about that. We've got to consider that are the benefits of fiber above and beyond the gut, right? So for one, they're 0 to 4 calories per gram, which you compare that to carbohydrates and protein and fat. Carbs and protein are 4 calories per gram. Fat is 9 calories per gram. So already you're consuming something, eating something, it's filling up space in your stomach, yet the calorie per gram is a lot less. Hence, it'll probably keep you full up for longer. Not to mention, these are often fermented, and that then gets that benefit, unless you're really targeting the bloating side of things. So you've got insoluble and soluble types of fiber. A good way to generally to describe them is that they soak up water more. And these just some of the benefits, like almost regardless of independent of the gut effects, right? So cholesterol, we know that fiber binds to cholesterol and takes that back to the liver. Good bacteria, inflammation, weight in terms of fullness, risk of type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, because of that slow digestion as well. So I'm sharing this now because I don't want to scare you from fiber, but you can get different types of fiber that will be less fermentable, right? So greens generally going to be less. Cooking your vegetables is going to make it less fermentable. And like I said, with these benefits that we talked about already. So, and I'm sharing this one here as well, because like I said at the start about constipation can be effectively reduced by stopping or even lowering the intake of dietary fiber, which is opposite to often which you'll get told, right? Interesting. Like, take a fiber gel. Is that actually the right thing to do? Who knows? And again, we need to consider that behind all of this, we've got diet, which from a young age, alcohol, gluten, dairy, are there intolerances, sugar? We know that smoking impacts it. FODMAPs, artificial sweeteners could impact it, because the artificial sweeteners, the reason they work so well is they're fermented in the gut. So because they're fermented, they can give off gas, bloating. So if you're quite bad to be around at certain times of the day, and maybe it's around the time that you have artificial sweeteners, there could be something going on there. But diet is causing a stress, which could be triggering IBS, could be impacting our gut health. And these are all things we can impact straight away, right? We're always looking for the quick fix, the probiotic, but actually, what about these? No problem, Annette. We know that inactivity, sedentary behavior for a long period of time impacts our gut health. Like moving improves our gut health. So although when we show probiotics has a positive impact, well, so does just moving. Can we just move more today? Not to mention all of these benefits. So we can get caught down a rabbit hole, right? Our stress management as well. Like I said, some people are doing yoga, Tai Chi, meditation, or show similar benefits to people who are taking probiotics. Is a symbiotic better? Who knows? So becoming in tune with your body, start asking questions. I feel tired today. Okay, why do I feel tired? What did I eat before? Become a master of your body and think about what you're putting in on here. We can go into that a hell of a lot. Was I sleep? What was my bedtime routine like? Work. Am I stressed at work at the moment? Any exercise we did? Are we doing more or less than normal? All these changes can impact bowel movements. Fiber intake. What I ate 2 hours ago. That'll tell you probably where you're at with that. Now, something that we talk about, and this aligns essentially with what the research shows in our Kickstart, is the food, fitness, mindset, focus side of things, which pretty much underpins fat loss health. If you get these 3 things right, you'll pretty much be on track, but you don't have to be perfect straight away. It's something that we always say. So whenever you're making a change, whenever you're trying to make a change, think about where you're at on this little graph here. So whenever we want to make a change at the start, we're like, yes, I'm doing this. Uninformed optimism comes in. We're buzzing to start, right? We're excited. Then we realize stage 2, informed pessimism. The day comes, you're like, oh, I can't eat that. I can't eat this. Or I've got to get up at 6 o'clock to exercise. And we're just like, oh. And then we drop into that valley of despair. And that's where we're like, sod this. I might as well just give up. It's easy. You'll get a dopamine hit from giving up. Does that mean that giving up is good for your gut health and your mental health? Probably not, right? You've got 2 choices here. Quit and repeat, go back. You'll feel good for 2 days, and then you'll go, oh, you know what? I need to change again. I'm so tired all the time. I've got no energy. My clothes aren't fitting. I'm bloated. Whatever it is, I'm out of breath walking up this hill when I wasn't 5 years ago. I'm pre-diabetic, whatever it is. And then we start again. But if we can get through that valley of despair and just realize that this is a normal cycle of change, it's going to be hard anyway. So we might as well choose the hard that's going to get us the results we want. Then we get into that informed optimism. Okay, it's going to be hard. I'm going to choose the hard. I'm going to act based on how I want to feel rather than how I currently feel. Then we get that success and fulfillment. And there's no better feeling than that. Making a choice because you want to make that choice rather than that choice because you're being policed, you're being told to eat healthy, eat this. No, actually, you're just making a decision that you want to make. Give yourself permission to eat anything you want, just not everything. Anything you want, there should be permission to have it. But just make the choice that you want to make that makes you feel good. Because I'm guessing you want to feel good. So something that you can apply today straight away. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being low, 10 being high, where's your energy at on a scale right now today? So just comment below of where you're at, 1 to 10. So just comment below, let me know where you're at. This is just something that I want to kind of finish on with this. So let me know, 1 being low, Maggie, 8, nice. 7, Belinda, good work. Jill, 1. Helen, 7. Jane, 7. Okay, Sandra, 7. Cool. Good, perfect. Okay, Michelle, 7. Awesome. So Debbie, 9. So what I want you to do now is note down one thing that you could do to get 1 point higher. So I'm not saying go from a 1 to a 10. How could you get from a 1 to a 2? How could you get to a 2 to a 3? What's one thing that you could do today? Maybe not today, maybe tomorrow. You could do it today. That if you did now, would get you 1 point higher. Christine, 8. Sue, 7. Alison, 8. Debbie, 1. 1 today. 10 yesterday. Katrina, 2. Teresa, 6. Cool. So just note down one thing and share it with me. One thing that you could do tomorrow. Go to bed earlier. Cool. Bed by 11, midnight last night. Yeah. So for me, bed by 9:45 tonight. I better get on, I know. Has a massive impact. That's one thing that will boost me from a 7 to an 8. And that's all you have to do day by day. Where am I at? 1 to 10. Well, how can I get 1 point? Because most people want to get from a 1 to a 10. Overwhelmed, do nothing. Might as well be a -10. Go to bed early. Everyone's going to bed early. Funny thing is, I'm bloody keeping you awake. Shit. Sorry. I'm the problem. Bloody hell. And the solution. To me as well. 1 minute workout. Perfect, Michelle. Yeah. And that's the thing. The 1 minute work, meditate instead of worry. Cool. So when I worry, notice when you worry, you're not doing, right? And this is something that helps me a lot. Every time I worry, it's not a problem. It's just an alarm clock that says I should be doing something. You can't do everything. You can always do one thing. You can't do everything. You can always do one thing. When I worry, it's because I'm not doing anything. When I'm doing, never worrying. And people say it when they come to sessions. They're like, I really didn't want to come today. Stress of work. There's so much going on. I feel so much better now. Mary, extra 1 minute workout. Perfect. Love that. So we're going from moving away from that feeling out of breath and tired, clothes not fitting, no energy, worrying about our health, feeling out of our control. Remember, your brain rewards you for movement, but only once you've done it. So dichotomy. Your gut rewards you for movement. We know serotonin, tryptophan, endorphins. Not eat yogurt. How come, Helen? So act based on how you want to feel rather than how you currently feel. Key. So should you take a probiotics or should you do these things, or do these things impact the gut just as much? This is something that is a bit catch-22. And I always say, go for the smallest action, the quickest thing that you can do today to take you from one step to another. That could be take a probiotic. That could act synergistically with what you're going to do. So what I want you to do is actually let me know what you're going to do from this. What's your biggest take home from tonight? And with that one thing as well that you're going to do, I would tally it, okay? Is it dinner and done. I'm not eating after dinner anymore. Is it protein every meal? Is it glass of water for every meal? Is it at least one meal of vegetables a day? Is it glass of water for every meal? Is it taking a probiotic? And just set a target and just tally it off every day. Watch those tally points. Have a look, set a target, tally it. There you go, Helen. So now you know in on there. So just commit to that for a certain amount of days and see how you feel. Then make the choice. I've got permission to feel sluggish or not. Then you make the choice that you want to make. So it's basing it on how you want to feel. Okay. So who'd like a copy of the low fermentation diet cheat sheet? If you want that, just comment below with gut health, and I'll send that over to you. So that's the 5-day challenge, that sheet that we worked on at the start. Just comment below with gut health, and I can send that over to you. So, yeah, absolutely, Sandra. So if you just comment below with gut health, I will get that sent over. Cool, Helen. Yeah, Belinda. Cool. Yeah, Sandra. Debbie. Cool. Perfect. Yeah, and does anyone have any questions? Eileen? Yeah, awesome. Jackie? Does anyone have any questions on this? Anything you want to ask? Michelle? Yeah, cool. Teresa? Yeah, Liz? Awesome. And hopefully with that, the information that we've gone through and the sheet, you've got enough info there to get started on why it might work, why it might not work, how to manipulate things from there. When we can chat through that as well if you want to in the old messenger. I've been on gut gummies from my protein for a month. Seems to make a difference. Perfect. Maggie, missed the first half hour. Cool. The replay will be on here as well. So you can watch that back through, Maggie. That's all good. So does anyone have any questions? Which probiotic was the most stable once taken? So it was Simprove. However, they did fund the study. I'm not, can't say that that's not all of it. They just helped with it. So I would. So this is what I would recommend if I was. I'll say, I won't say a recommendation. I'll say what I do. Simprove is very expensive, but it does seem to make sense because it's water-based, so it doesn't stimulate the digestive juices acid like food would, like dairy would, right? However, there's so many studies on dairy being beneficial in terms of the probiotics like Yakults and all of them that seem to show a benefit in certain people that I would go with something like a BioCult, and that's what I actually take and actually give to the kids. Quite a lot. I sprinkle it on stuff. So BioCult, I also don't mind Actimels anyway, from like a yogurt point of view, and the kids actually love them anyway, but I don't have that many of them. But I'd probably recommend going down that route, like BioCult, if I was going to take one. But I'd also ask like why you're taking them, and then you can measure, okay, is it going to be right for me? Eileen, I only have 8 centimeters of large intestine after many ops. Will probiotics still help? Good question. I don't think we would know. Good question. Like, that would be a good question to ask a consultant and see what they say on it. They're probably not going to know. I mean, I would hypothesize that it would still have the same effect, But I wouldn't know if it would be beneficial or not. And I can't imagine there's any studies on it as well. But either or, I think it's worth asking that question to consultant or and seeing, maybe having a look, see if anyone else who's gone through similar has taken them before. And I guess the key thing would be, do you get any abnormal symptoms from only having 8 centimeters of intestine that you kind of want to get a handle on? That would be the first question for that. All good, Jackie. Great stuff. So I hope you found that helpful. Any questions, as always? No question coming. How long would you take probiotics for? It depends on what you're treating. Depends what it's for. I used to be more religious with this, but I used to do it every time the seasons changed. Yeah, I used to do that when the seasons change. Yeah. Sandra, can you confirm? I believe you said taking probiotics may enhance the effect. Not necessarily the effect of antibiotics, but more the effect of the probiotic, because your gut bacteria, I'll just confirm that. So it won't necessarily make the antibiotic better, but the effect of the probiotic would probably be better because your gut bacteria be wiped out at that time. Does that make sense, Sandra? Good question, actually. I can see how that can be misinterpreted, as many things can. Yeah. Cool. Perfect. Yeah, I remember when if I've ever had to take antibiotics, I went crazy on on the probiotics. Yeah, perfect. Brilliant. We'll have an awesome evening. Many of you are getting to bed shortly too. And remember, sleep helps your gut health as well. My 1 hour presentation on gut health has lasted 1 hour and 20 minutes. It's not bad for me. Anyway, awesome. See you, Belinda. See you, Jane. See you, Debbie. Awesome work. Great stuff, Jill. Glad you enjoyed it. Interesting, Maggie. Awesome. Perfect. Cool. Any questions? As always, just let me know. And if you're on replay again, comment below and I'll catch up on this. Off to bed now. Sandra, awesome. Cheers, Helen. Cheers, Liz. Perfect. Have a good rest of your evening and I'll see you soon. Great. Thanks, Michelle. Awesome, Sue. Debbie. See you later. See you, Alison. Bye-bye. See you, Kay.